Who was Al Capone really, and why does his name echo through the annals of American crime history? Al Capone, a name that's become synonymous with the roaring 20s, bootlegging and organized crime. He was the face of the Chicago outfit, a crime syndicate that reigned supreme during the Prohibition era. But how did a Brooklyn-born son of Italian immigrants rise to become one of the most notorious gangsters in American history? And what made him so intriguing that we're still fascinated by his story nearly a century later? Was it his ruthless efficiency, his flamboyant lifestyle, or the sheer audacity of his criminal empire? These questions and more will be explored as we delve into the world of Al Capone, the man behind the legend, the gangster behind the headlines. So buckle up and prepare to be enthralled. Dive with us into the turbulent life of this infamous gangster. Every story has a beginning, and Al Capone starts in Brooklyn, New York. Born into a modest Italian immigrant family, young Alphonse Gabriel Capone was one of 9 siblings. His parents, Gabriele and Teresina, were hard-working folk, striving to provide the best for their children in the land of opportunities. However, the allure of the streets proved too strong for the young Capone. The bustling, gritty streets of Brooklyn became his classroom, and the hustlers, his teachers. In these early years, Capone was not a model student in the traditional sense. His fiery temper led to his expulsion from school at the age of 14, following a physical altercation with a teacher. This incident marked a turning point in Capone's life. The schoolyard was replaced with the grimy back alleys, and textbooks with the harsh lessons of street survival. As a teenager, Capone was drawn towards the notorious 5 Points gang. This was a gang that ruled the roost in the underworld of New York City. The 5 Points gang was a melting pot of hardened criminals, and it was here that Capone crossed paths with Johnny Torrio. Torrio, a man of considerable influence in the criminal underworld, took young Capone under his wing. He saw potential in Capone's raw ambition and ruthlessness. This relationship would prove to be instrumental in shaping Capone's future. In the 5 Points gang, Capone started off as a bouncer in a brothel. It was a humble beginning, but one that provided him with an intimate understanding of the workings of the criminal world. The brothel was a hotbed of crime, a world that operated on its own set of rules, and young Capone was a quick learner. He absorbed the lessons of power, manipulation, and survival that the streets and the underworld taught him. Capone's early years were a blend of hardship, defiance, and ambition. He was a product of his environment, molded by the harsh realities of his time. The street-smart kid from Brooklyn was on a path that would lead him to become one of the most notorious gangsters in history. As Capone grew older, his ambitions, too, escalated. Leaving New York for Chicago, Capone was on the path to infamy. The year was 1919, and the Windy City was about to get a gust of criminal activity like it had never seen before. Al Capone, a young man of 21, was leaving his birthplace of Brooklyn, New York, in pursuit of bigger and badder things. Upon his arrival, Capone found a mentor in Johnny Torrio, a man of influence in Chicago's underworld. Torrio was a visionary. He saw the potential in the Prohibition era, a time when the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcohol were illegal. He was quick to capitalize on the situation, establishing a bootlegging business that was set to make him and his associates very wealthy men. Capone, with his keen business sense and ruthless demeanor, quickly rose through the ranks of Torrio's outfit. His rise wasn't without bloodshed, though. The streets of Chicago became a battlefield, as rival gangs vied for control of the lucrative bootlegging trade. Capone was not one to back down from a fight. His ruthless tactics and strategic mind made him a formidable opponent, and his reputation grew with each victory. In 1925, Capone's time came. Torrio, after surviving an assassination attempt, decided to retire, leaving Capone as the de facto leader of the Chicago outfit. Capone was just 26, but he was ready. He had learned from the best, and he was prepared to take the reins. Capone's takeover marked a new era in Chicago's criminal underworld. His reign was characterized by violence and bloodshed, but also by business acumen and strategic alliances. He expanded the outfit's operations, venturing into various illegal activities such as gambling and prostitution, in addition to the already thriving bootlegging business. With power came notoriety, and Capone was soon a household name. His flamboyant lifestyle and brazen disregard for the law made him a media sensation. He was the face of American organized crime, a symbol of the lawlessness of the Roaring Twenties. But with fame came scrutiny, and the law was closing in. Al Capone's reign at the top was about to be challenged. At the height of Prohibition, Capone ruled Chicago with an iron fist. In a time when the sale, production, and transportation of alcohol was illegal, Capone found a golden opportunity. He built an empire on the thirst of the masses, becoming the kingpin of the bustling bootlegging industry. But the scope of his criminal activities didn't stop there. Capone's empire extended far beyond the speakeasies and secret distilleries. His operations encompassed a variety of illicit activities, including prostitution and gambling. He created a network so vast and intricate that law enforcement could hardly keep up. The city was in his grasp, and he pulled the strings with a shrewd, ruthless precision. One of the most notorious events in Capone's reign was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in February of 1929. In an attempt to eliminate his rival, Bugs Moran, and his North Side gang, Capone's men executed 7 members of the gang in broad daylight. Despite the brutal violence and public outcry, Capone was never officially linked to the massacre. However, the incident only served to solidify his reputation as a ruthless and dangerous crime lord. Despite the seemingly untouchable status Capone enjoyed, his reign was not without its challenges. His notoriety attracted the attention of federal agencies, and his every move was scrutinized. His reputation, once his greatest asset, had become a liability. But even for a man like Capone, the law eventually catches up. The reign of crime, like all good things, had to come to an end. But the legacy of Al Capone, the crime king of Chicago, still echoes in the annals of criminal history. From the peak of power to the depths of imprisonment, Capone's fall was as dramatic as his rise. Despite his criminal prowess, Capone's downfall was not brought about by a hail of bullets or a rival gang, but by an unassuming adversary, the Internal Revenue Service. In the late 1920s, Capone found himself in the crosshairs of the US government, not for his notorious criminal activities, but for tax evasion. The irony was not lost on the public, for the man who had seemingly been invincible in the face of the law was finally undone by something as mundane as unpaid taxes. Capone's trial was a spectacle, a theater of justice that gripped the nation. Despite his swagger and defiant attitude, Capone was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, a term unheard of for tax evasion at the time. His empire crumbled, his influence waned, and the man who once held Chicago in his grip was reduced to a federal inmate. His time in Alcatraz, the infamous island prison, was far from the life of luxury Capone was accustomed to. The harsh conditions and isolation took a toll on his health and mind. While incarcerated, Capone's health rapidly declined due to late-stage syphilis, a disease he had contracted in his youth, but had gone untreated. His mind deteriorated, and by the time of his release, 8 years later, he was a shell of his former self. Capone spent the last years of his life in his Florida mansion, his health deteriorating further until his death in 1947. His final days were spent in a confused state, a far cry from the shrewd and ruthless gangster he had once been. Al Capone, a name synonymous with crime, left behind a legacy that continues to fascinate us. His life is a testament to the rise and fall of power, a captivating tale of ambition, crime, and ultimately downfall. What makes Al Capone's story so enduring? The answer lies in the indelible impact of his life and crimes on the fabric of American culture and history. Al Capone, with his pinstripe suits and cigar-chomping image, became the face of organized crime during the Prohibition era. His notorious deeds, while reprehensible, have fascinated generations. They provide a window into a time of lawlessness and rebellion, giving us a glimpse of the underbelly of the Roaring Twenties. His influence extends beyond the realms of history books. He's been immortalized in numerous films, books, and songs, becoming a symbol of the gangster archetype. This portrayal in media and popular culture often glamorizes his life of crime, yet it's important to remember the reality of his actions and their consequences. So we circle back to the question, why is Al Capone's story so enduring? Perhaps because it serves as a reminder of the thin line between ambition and corruption, the allure of power, and the cost of unbridled greed. Al Capone, a figure of infamy and intrigue, remains an enigma, his story a captivating exploration of the dark side of the American dream.